All right, so Eternals has been rated one of the worst Marvel movies of all time thus far, and I think I know why. So, what's going on YouTube? It's We Sibs, West Coast, East Coast siblings, where we talk about your favorite movies and TV shows. And yes, we're talking about the Eternals. I saw it this weekend, and it's not doing too well, and I think I understand why. So, let's talk about it. Relax, sit back, grab a snack, subscribe, click the bell. Let's dive into it. So, the Eternals, right? So, Marvel's trying again to introduce a new superhero team. They've had tremendous success with this, with Guardians of the Galaxy, and even with the Avengers. They're household names now, but at the time, the most popular characters from Marvel were Spider-Man and Hulk. But they were able to take characters like Iron Man and Thor, Captain America, and make them household names, make them global icons, where they were certainly more popular than Guardians or Eternals, but not at that Spider-Man Hulk tier. And now they obviously are. So they're trying that again. It's not doing very well. On viewers aren't rating it very high, and I think I understand why. But I'm not going to start with the negative. Let's talk about what I did like about the movie. The first thing, number one, was the tone. It's much more edgy, much darker, toward the darker palette of the Marvel colors, right? So they usually use bright oranges and stuff to convey lightheartedness, happiness. This was toward the cooler tones, and I like that. Personally, my personal flavor of superhero is edgier, darker, grittier, more real world type, kind of like DC. That's why I personally prefer the DC movies. As a fan, I generally prefer DC superheroes over Marvel superheroes, but in terms of the movie, I actually like the movies too better than the MCU movies for that exact reason. I don't like the lighthearted, kind of semi-unrealistic comedic tone of the MCU movies. That's just my 2 cents, and I'm not going to be dogmatic about that. But I do like that the Eternals goes toward that darker palette. There's much more, I think, violence in general, for sure. The stakes seem more realistic and heavier. Those were all really good, and I think it moved the MCU, or at least this part of the MCU, in a darker direction that gave us a different flavor, and that's good because they got to stay fresh. Otherwise it just really gets stagnant. And having over 20 movies at this point, you need to look for ways to stay fresh. So I thought those were really great things. I also thought that the characters, obviously, were much more powerful, and I personally like that. We go to the Avengers, right? Great superhero team, but you've got like your god tier characters, Thor and Hulk, right? Captain Marvel. But, then you got other heroes, and they're really just human. Captain America, he's enhanced human, but still, a bullet, he's pretty much done. He's done. Iron Man, also human. Hawkeye, when he was still mainstream, very human. Black Widow, very human. And you can tell Marvel was moving in that direction and phasing out those less powerful characters as they move toward Celestials, as they move toward characters like Galactus. Oh, by the way, this review is going to be spoilery. So, I'm not going to hold back. I'm not going to try to hide it. It's Tuesday at this point, so get it together. Anyway, so I like that the characters are much more powerful because it's going to allow for greater stakes. It's going to allow for incredible CGI and effects, and that segues into the next thing that I really liked about it was the special effects. I think Marvel and Disney, they're just getting better and better and better at this stuff. Certainly working on owning Star Wars as well as the MCU. They're just able to make some of the best special effects we've ever seen. Obviously, with them owning Pixar, they know how to make realistic looking animations and stuff like that. Although one graphic that I really found jarringly distracting was any of the space scenes where they were before the Celestial, I forget his name, Kryzak or Cusack or whatever. This is just off the dome, so I'm not going to really remember all the names, but the main Celestial that they would take the orb to contact, Cersei goes to see him. Their hair would always flow, but it was only like their front hairs, and they were kind of covering the rest of their hairs. But if you look past the CGI hairs, you see the regular hair not moving at all. And so I'm like, shouldn't all the hair be floating if some of the hairs is the other hair heavier than the other hair? Anyway, this is a small thing and I digress. And I don't think it's something that people should really, crucify this movie for. But with that being said, another segue into what they should be crucifying this movie for, and some of the bad things about this movie that I really didn't like. Oh man, it's getting darker, isn't it? So the things I didn't like about the movie. Number one, it dragged a lot. And I understand that with an origin story, because this is an origin story, so you have to give it a break. In regard to origin stories, it's actually not the worst that I've seen. But at the same time, this just dragged a little bit more, and it's because they're not only introducing new characters, okay, like in the Avengers, but they're introducing an entirely new world, okay? Now, what you may be saying is, oh, okay, well, Chris, they have new characters introduced and a new world, but then why did Guardians of the Galaxy do so well? Let me tell you why. In my opinion, Guardians of the Galaxy, while they were introducing new characters in a new world, they had a completely different tone to the movie. It's much easier to feel like you gravitate toward characters when it's a comedy. And Guardians of the Galaxy was very comedic. It was very lighthearted. It was very fast-paced. It was very high energy. And that's going to be a fun ride for everybody. Whereas the Eternals, they were establishing all of those same things, but with a darker palette, a darker tone, less jokes. And so jokes really help people develop love for characters. And so there just wasn't a whole lot of that with these characters. Standout actor, just by the way, just a little side thing. I think Angelina Jolie did a fantastic job as Athena, not Athena, as she liked to correct people in the movie. Yeah, she was definitely one of the best. I think Kit Harington did a good job, but he was like barely in it, so, you know, whatever. Yeah, so I think that's the difference between something like Guardians of the Galaxy versus the Eternals, is they were both trying to establish new characters and new worlds, but in two different ways, and one way just hits and the other way just didn't so much. They were both space bound and stuff like that, so they could, you know, go really, you know, zoom in really tight, tongue twister on the Earth and like deal with Earth things. Like they had a little love story with Cersei's character, and what was it, Issachar, whatever. I saw the movie, so don't judge me. Between those two characters, they could zoom in and kind of make it intimate, kind of make it real, and then they could zoom out and be talking to a celestial in the very next scene. And so I thought that was a really cool thing. But at the same time, when you're doing both of those things and kind of jumping back and forth between the two, it's a little jarring, and there's no home feeling, there's no grounded feeling for a lot of these characters. I'm gonna hit this light. Because, you know, this is just a conversation. This is just unscripted. I'm just talking about the movie. So, you know, all the fancy editing that you get on the Granted Geek Show, you're not going to get here, okay? Trust me. And if you don't like me, you're not going to like this show. Anyway, so it dragged in that way. Had a hard time establishing characters that you really felt for, that you really liked. I think one of the characters that you did kind of feel that for was Sprite. And she ended up getting the life she wanted in the end. But at the same time, Sprite was a character that it was only one, and you're introducing what, 8 characters? Fastos was another character that, you know, they tried to bring a little bit of humanity into the story, but I think even that fell flat. I think just everywhere where they tried to, you know, Cersei's love story, I think everywhere where they tried to humanize the Eternals kind of fell flat. And I don't want to say that you can't establish characters that people will like in a 2-something hour movie if it's not a comedy. But I think that's what people are having trouble with. And also, I think that with Marvel, you know, having 20 plus movies and really establishing a way that they do things and create characters and introduce them, I think that any time that they go away from that well-worn path, they're going to get some pushback. But kudos to Marvel for trying. I think they should, do I think they should do it anyway and keep going with this? No, I don't. I think you should listen to the people, much like they did with the Captain Marvel character. I mean, they introduced her. They gave her the best shot that they could. They said, this is the future of the MCU. This is the most powerful Avenger. They hyped her up. But at the end of the day, people just didn't like her. They didn't resonate with the character. They didn't resonate with her story. And so, you know, Marvel was going to move elsewhere, you know, kind of focusing more on Black Panther and Scarlet Witch, which was fantastic. And people loved those characters. Unfortunately, Chadwick Boseman passed away, as you all know, if you're watching this video. And so they're kind of going in a different direction, but you can kind of tell they're not going to be returning to Captain Marvel as the spotlight, as the main character of the MCU. And so in that sense, I really do like the way that Marvel listens to their fans, unlike some other studios that own superheroes, DC, that don't like to listen to their fans. Hashtag Snydercut, baby. So yeah, I think that Marvel should definitely take a lesson from this. but they should continue to be creative. And I like how Marvel has a way of making you think, oh, well, that's what we were going to do all along, but still giving the fans what we want. We don't care if you want to take credit for it. At the end of the day, yeah, sure, you guys are the ones who signed the contracts, but if you just do what the fans want, we're going to put butts in seats, and we're going to be happy with what, you know, you deliver on. Because in terms of the action, the set pieces, that awesome ending piece with the Celestials, the final battle scene, none of that stuff I'm going to have any issue with. It was top-notch. It was fantastic. Avengers-level action. In terms of just graphics, the fidelity of all that, was really, really good. But I think that's why it fell flat. It's just, it was a hard time making connection with the characters. So with that being said, guys, let me know what you thought of the movie yourselves down in the comments below. I'll be chatting it up with you guys all week as we look forward to The Witcher Season 2. I'm wrapping up Titans and some stuff. I'm actually out of town. I'm in Florida right now on business, doing a little cinematography and stuff like that. Maybe I'll keep you up to date on some of that stuff. But yeah, that's been the Eternals movie. Let me know if you loved it or hated it. And let me know if you loved or hated this video with a like or a dislike. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!